Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Mystical Realms podcast. My name's LauraRedWitch, and I hope you're having a really lovely day and a supercharged build up to Samhain or Halloween. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, well, I hope you're having a really nice warm build up to Beltane or May Day. Here in Glastonbury, it is cold. It is feeling really frosty now. And over the weekend, there was storms and winds and rains. And I was lighting a fire in a ceremony, and it was all the elements were, really going for it. And I felt like this is a build-up to Samhain. This is October. This is the season of the witch. The veils are thin, and nature is letting us know that winter and Samhain is coming. So, in tune with all this energy, I thought what we'd do today, for today's episode of the show, is to go deeper into the aspects of the Morrigan. Now, if you haven't heard of the Morrigan, please listen to my other podcasts and my many videos on YouTube about her. But, in short, she is an Irish and Celtic goddess of the Tuatha de Dannan. She is a goddess of battle, of sex, of prophecy, sovereignty, and many other things. She appears as a goddess on her own, as the Morrigan, or she is a triple goddess. And it is one of her aspects as a triple goddess that we're going to look into today on the show. Firstly, I would like to apologise for any pronunciations of Irish Gaelic that I don't do very well here. I'm not a Gaelic speaker, and if you do know how these things are pronounced properly, do let me know. I'll do my very best, but I would actually really love to know the real pronunciations. So, in the Book of Invasions, the Liber Gabala Eren, it says that Baive and Macha and Anand, or Anu, of whom the paps of Anu in Luaka were the three daughters of Ernmas. So I'll read that again. Baive and Macha and Anand, or Anu, of whom the paps of Anu in Luaka were the three daughters of Ernmas. So this shows us three of the most popular aspects of the Morrigan. Baive, spelled B-A-D-B, and Macha, who we'll talk about today, and Anand, or Anu. And we can see that parts of Ireland are named after these aspects of the Morrigan. So Macha is the goddess that I would love to talk about today. She is an aspect of the Morrigan, and within her own right, she has different aspects of herself. A few years ago now, I was writing an article for a book, anthology of different people, over 80, it says here, 80 adherents and scholars of goddesses and goddess spirituality. And this is called Naming the Goddess, and it's published by Moon Books. And I wrote an essay or a contribution about the goddess Macha. It could only be a certain amount of words, so it isn't huge. And I wanted to read it to you today. And of course, as I wrote it a few years ago, there probably will be things that I would like to change, or we may go into some aspects of what I've spoken about after the reading. But I'm going to read this now, and it can be a little primer to learning about the Morrigan and learning about Macha as well. She is a goddess of horses, of the land, and of different aspects of sovereignty. For me, she's quite an accessible aspect of the Morrigan, maybe because I love horses so much, and I really enjoyed going to Emain Macha, which is her fort in Ulster. I really love that place. And if you are in Northern Ireland and you are in Ireland and can visit, I really would recommend going to Emain Macha, which is now called Navan Fort. Maybe because of those aspects that feel very real, through connecting with the galloping of horses, through seeing the hills and the land, it shows you a different aspect of the Morrigan. We always look at the aspects of battle And indeed, Macha has plenty of aspects of battle, even, that we're going to look at today. But there's something else with Macha. There's something of the power and beauty and gentleness of nature, of horses. The speed and strength, but also the warmth and care of horses too. And in these tales of Macha, we'll find out a little bit more about her, and therefore a little bit more about the Morrigan. So without further ado, Cobweb the cat and myself will read my old article on Macha and see what we think. Okay, you're sitting comfortably, guys and girls. Do you have a cup of tea or coffee or hot chocolate or wine or whatever you fancy curling up with today? Get yourself nice and cosy, and let's learn about Macha, a goddess of Ireland, a goddess of the Morrigan and the Tuatha de Dannan. Macha. Macha is a powerful Irish goddess of the Tuatha de Dannan, children of the goddess Danu. Her stories and aspects are rich and varied, some of which we'll explore in this essay. In brief, she is a goddess of fertility, the land, horses, battle and sovereignty. Her name, which means plain, pasture or field, is the key to her essence as a goddess of the earth and to her shifting moods. The land can be abundant, fertile and peaceful, or dark, deadly and wild, just like the different faces of Macha. Most common in modern paganism, we associate Macha with being part of the trinity of goddesses who make up the awe-inspiring Morrigan. Together, Macha, Bave and Anu, or Nemain, depending on the tale, represent the three main guises of the Morrigan. And even though all three were called warrior queens, they each represent different aspects of the complex divine feminine, Celtic style. In the Liber Gabala Aren, the Book of Invasions, Morrigan, Macha and Bave are stated to be daughters of the mother goddess Ernmas. It is a theme in Celtic lore that sisters were often portrayed as different aspects of the same goddess. To complicate things further, Macha also has three roles, or guises of her own. The life of a Celtic goddess is rarely dull. She appears in one tale as a goddess, in another as mortal warrior queen, and in another as a fairy woman. In all these roles, however, she displays her deep inner strength, passion, and sovereign right to rule. Despite some of her more fearsome habits, such as collecting the heads of fallen warriors known as Macha's masts, and helping the Morrigan pour blood and fire onto the battlefield to test the army's bravery, there are many tales of Macha which show her to be a champion of fighting for what you believe in, loving fiercely, and nurturing that which truly matters. Macha's strong energy allows us to journey and change. She can be called upon in times of deep transformation. Macha is mainly associated with Ulster, and there are several sites in Northern Ireland which bear her name. In Main Macha is Ulster's legendary seat of kings, and modern-day Armagh comes from Ard Macha, meaning heights of Macha. The story of Macha in Armagh is a brief but tragic one. In this tale, the goddess is married to Nemed, meaning holy or sacred. Arriving in Ireland together, Nemed clears a plain and dedicates it to her. Upon seeing the land, she has a terrible vision of the bloodshed in the forthcoming Tain Bor Culain, the cattle reign of Cooley, and promptly dies of a broken heart. Nemed then takes her to be buried at Ard Macha. Her death, however, is not permanent, and perhaps her severe reaction to this vision relates to her deep connection to the fate of the land and the people of Ireland. Main Macha is one of my favourite places in Ireland. It is an ancient site of pagan and archaeological importance, as well as a sacred space of awesome ancestral energy. Now called Navan Fort, Main Macha is the home of two epic Macha tales. The first story portrays her as a mortal queen with fiery red tresses named Macha Mongrúd. When her father, King Ead, is drowned, Macha, as his only child, decides to claim her right to rule as queen. The other heirs to the throne do not take too kindly to this news, stating that they would not give up kingship to a woman. Probably not the best thing to say to a goddess. Of course, Macha goes to war with them, wins, and becomes queen. To add insult to injury, she enslaves the sons of a rival king and forces them to build a seat of power for her. Taking the brooch pin from her neck, she clears the land and marks the space required. The seat of power which is created there is Emain Macha, which in this case means brooch pin of Macha. The third and most famous story of Macha gives a different twist to Emain Macha, stating that the name means twins of Macha. This story begins in typical fairy tale fashion, but soon escalates into a major precursor for the Táin. Cruinnic Mag Agnomain is a rich widower who falls in love with a woman who runs inconceivably fast and cleans his house for him, Macha. He quickly takes her as his wife, and all goes splendidly well until he visits a fair organised by the High King of Ulster. At this event, he ill-advisedly boasts that his wife, who is at this point 9 months pregnant, can run faster than any of the king's horses. This boast angers the king so much that he orders Macha to be summoned to race his best horses. Macha appeals that she is about to go into labour. However, the wrathful king cares little for this, stating that if she doesn't do this, he will kill Cruinnic. Sorry guys, I hope I'm saying this right. Macha goes into labour as the race begins. She runs through this excruciating pain, still managing to beat the king's horses. Collapsing at the finishing line, she gives birth to twins, hence the name Twins of Macha. With her last breath, however, she reveals her true power and curses the men of Ulster with the pains of a woman in labour when they are most needed to fight. With this curse upon them, they are all rendered helpless when Queen Maeve of Connacht's army attacks at the Táin, leaving only the semi-divine hero Cuchulainn able to fight. Cuchulainn himself has quite a love-hate dynamic with the Morrigan, which in turn leads to his downfall. And I think, this is a side note to the article, that Cuchulainn's horse, which is a grey horse, was called the Grey of Macha or something like that. So the horse of Cuchulainn, this hero with a love-hate dynamic with Morrigan, his horse is named the Grey of Macha, I think. We'll check those details, but I think that's the case. Back to the article. These colourful stories may conflict and confuse, but in essence they portray a powerful and uncompromising goddess who can awaken the fiery warrior spirit within us all. The Celts believed that the cycles of life, death and rebirth were linked and not to be feared. Macha's stories reflect this belief, and by calling upon her we can be more aware of the shifting cycles of our own lives. When I visualise Macha, I think of the land. In my mind's eye, I see the rolling green hills of Emain Macha and feel the warm summer sun upon my face. I hear the sound of galloping horses beating the earth like a drum. I see her there in the herd, red hair blowing wild in the breeze, and I feel a deep call to run with her, fearless and free. So that was my article about Macha, written a few years ago. So let's go into a few of these points, shall we? Let's have a little look. So you see the numbers here again, which we've spoken about before with Celtic goddesses as well as with Norse goddesses, are 3 and 9. You'll see the number 3 is absolutely sacred to the Morrigan, sacred to the Celts. And so not only the 3 aspects of the Morrigan, Macha herself has another 3 aspects. And she has to do this race when she is 9 months pregnant, which is an important part of this story. The numbers, number 3 and number 9, they are going to repeat again and again as motifs in both Celtic and Norse mythology and there's tales, and they are not there for, any old reason. They're important and they tell about the Celtic mind. So let's look more into this story and maybe look at the less pretty aspects of Macha. So you may recall that I mentioned Macha's masts. Now, Macha's masts were a collection of severed heads. They were the severed heads of the warriors fallen in battle. And the Celts believed, as many other cultures believed, that the soul resided in the head. So headhunting and taking the heads of a warrior, of a person in battle, was seen as taking their power, taking their soul, or taking their something that represented the ultimate of them. And apart from collecting the heads, which is obviously a lovely habit, this is also the energy of Macha and the Morrigan, being at the battlefield, taking the heads or the souls of the warriors to the afterlife, is akin to the Valkyrie in Norse mythology. I'm not trying to make those links between. They're obviously very, they are different cultures, but there are links there to similar attributes of some of the Celtic and Irish goddesses of battle and of the Valkyrie with Norse mythology. Also, both were rather a fan of cattle raiding. That was a big thing. Generally the most, I don't know if popular is the right word, but common form of disagreements and battles and strife in Ireland was cattle raving. Raiding. I don't think raving was a problem. I'm not sure if partying cows caused too much of an issue for the goddesses and the gods, but they really did like driving the cows to different places, stealing cows, and there was fairy cows. And I think if you see a cow that's larger than the rest of them and it's white with red ears or red eyes, it could well be a fairy cow linked to the Morrigan. So yes, the heads of the warriors linked to the Morrigan's aspect as a battle goddess and also a goddess of the afterlife and taking the warriors on. But let's also look at her role as a beautiful and powerful goddess of the earth. So that will be in our last story, where she is great at running fast, like a horse, essentially linked to horses, and also really good at cleaning. Well, these tales get brought into or watered down to be fairy tales, and you get many stories of these fairy queens or these goddesses or fairy women that marry or fall in love with a mortal, or fairy men and mortal women, or whatever you like. But those dynamics appear a lot in folklore and fairy tale. And guess what? They rarely end well. Just like in this tale here, usually a mortal is given something they are not supposed to do. They can have all the wealth and benefits of being in love and having a goddess or a fairy woman around, which often brings great wonders, great riches, beautiful children, all these things to them. And yet there's one thing that they can't do. And they usually do it. And that usually causes a great disaster, or the fact they can't be together. In the tale of Melusine, she is a woman, a beautiful fairy queen, a beautiful fairy woman who turns into either a water serpent, a dragon, or something of a similar ilk. And she is a beautiful, powerful force of nature. And when she falls in love with a mortal, or a mortal falls in love with her, she just tells him one thing he cannot do. She will give him children. She will be with him. She will, give him all this abundance. He just has got not to watch her bathing. It's either like on a full moon or on a Saturday. There is just one instruction that he's not allowed to do, because obviously at this bathing time, it's when she turns into her true self, into her serpent form, or into a half woman, half sea serpent, or half dragon, or half fish, depending on the story that you read. So they have a lovely life, lovely children, all the abundance. And of course, one day he's like, why is she having secrets from me? What's going on here? I want to see what Melusine is doing in this bath time. And then he sees her in her true form, in her wild fairy form. And of course, he goes absolutely mental. He loses it. He's not happy. And yes, she's not either. She turns into a dragon and flies around the castle in absolute despair. But that's for another day. Many stories are the same, like with Selkies as well. There's always rules put upon the mortal. One rule, and there's one fairy story I read where the mortal was not allowed to lay a hand or to hit his fairy wife, and he might have just done so playfully, and therefore, boom, she was gone, and they couldn't be together anymore, leaving everybody heartbroken. So, in this story, you can see that Macha, as a wife, brings humongous abundance to the farmer, to the person, the human mortal that she's married. She brings all the good things. But I might have not mentioned this in the article. She does tell him, it is a rule, do not boast about me. I don't think I remember that I read that in the article, so I missed that out. Yeah, that is the rule. She tells him, do not boast about me to people. Do not say all the wonderful things that your wife does. And so that one thing he does causes an absolute distress and destruction. Well. But with him saying that she could outrun the king's horses, this really does link her to being a horse goddess, and to be connected to the herds of horses and the royal horses as well. Of course, she's a prophetess, a seer as well, by saying as she is giving birth and dying at the same time, so we have life and death at the same time coming there, she's cursing and telling the people in the crowd what's going to happen in this great war ahead. So, she died, but she gave birth to twins. And that also, I think, with the curse, would last 9 generations. So we've got the number 9 again, coming up again with Macha. So there's so much in these tales that are of a motif of the Morrigan and of Celtic lore. And Macha really fascinates me. Maybe it's the red hair, maybe it's the animals, maybe it's the strong sovereign energy, but she's an aspect of the Morrigan that I feel really warmly drawn to. It's interesting as well with the story that I mentioned in the article about when she is divinely meant to be queen and the other male heirs go, you're not going to be a queen, we're not having a woman as a queen, and she has to go through some tricks and some strong battles her own way to make sure that she is the queen. And I wonder if this element or this story has evolved and developed through the original earth goddess energy, where the goddess would be sovereign. The goddess would be the goddess of the land. She'd be representing everything in the land. And the king would be really, in her debt. He would be in honour of her and a servant of her. So basically, if there was something like a famine, or the crops weren't growing, or something was going terribly wrong and they were losing all the battles, the king would have been sacrificed to the earth goddess for having displeased her. And another king would have been chosen who would hopefully change the fates and change the fortunes of the people. So for such a long while, the goddesses of the land were the sovereign energy that the king would pay homage to. And perhaps with those energies changing and the goddess not being, this is just an idea, potentially as respected so much, that this represented by the heirs, the kings not wanting to be, indebted to a queen. Just an idea, but probably quite a likely idea as well, with the changing of the tides. And still, Macha wins, and she tricks them, and she enslaves the other sons and creates her land. We can see her as the earth goddess as she, in the story with the brooch, where she draws out the land, or her husband draws out the land with a brooch pin. And she's obviously an agricultural goddess as well. There's so many different aspects of her. If you personally would like to connect with Macha, if you would like to discover more about her, this aspect of the Morrigan can be done very strongly by walking, by connecting with the land, by going to places that you feel are green and good and make you think about maybe some burial mounds, or maybe there's these hills that remind you of the twin peaks of the twins of Macha. By getting to know the land around you, maybe even by visiting Ireland, but very much by getting to know the land around you, you connect with Macha. And also a way of connecting with Macha, a way that I enjoy connecting with Macha, is connecting with her totem animal, which is, as we mentioned, the horse. Now, horses made so much possible for humans. Before cars and anything like that, people went from walking to being able to ride on a horse. Everything got so much quicker. They could go so much further. They could use the horse in agriculture, and the horse represents status and power, as well as speed and ability to go into battle. So all these amazing sacrifices, really, that horses have made for humans. But it's the wild horses, the horses that have that enigmatic presence, the herds, the galloping, the freedom of the horse that really inspires me. And with all that strength and all that power, they are at the same time so soft, so gentle, and so healing. So with the totem of Macha, perhaps we can see some different aspects of her. Yes, of course, horses have been used to go into battle for many, many years, up until the First World War. But horses are at heart strong, wild, free, fast, exploring new horizons, having the spirit of freedom and the spirit of adventure, and also so gentle, so nurturing. I'm thinking about their beautiful eyes and their lovely soft muzzles at the moment. And they can bring such healing and understanding to us as humans. I know a lot of people have horse therapy, and it helps people with trauma. They are very much in tune, and they pick up on emotions, and they can be exceptionally healing to connect with. So these are some of the aspects of Macha that we can discover through discovering her totem, discovering her land. We can read the tales, which are often about battle, which are often about strife, and the stories of how cultures and societies came to be. But if we walk the land, if we understand the seasons and the change and the work people need to put into the land for life, and if we look at the horses and we go maybe close to a horse or connect with a horse, we can learn so much about the power of the horse and also the power of Macha. As horses give us journeys in this world that we can travel, we can gallop from A to B or over fences and across the beach. Also, a shaman's drum is known as a horse journey, the horse's journey. So the beating of the drum is very similar to the galloping of horses. And a shamanic journey, can be like a horse journey between the worlds. So we can connect with Macha as we explore the other world, as we go on shamanic journeys and as we drum. So drumming can be a wonderful way to connect with Macha and connect with the spirit of the horse. As a goddess of the land and of fertility, Macha is also connected with the warmth of the sun and the rays of the sun. And the horse is also a totem of the sun. So we can see her not only as a goddess of these battles and these strifes that went on the land, but maybe something that preempted that as an original fertility goddess of the fertile land and the rays of the sun, creating abundance for people. And horses are also symbols of these things. So these are beautiful connections of how we can, at a really strong and core level, connect with Macha and connect with the horse energy, the land and the warmth as aspects of the powerful goddess, the Morrigan. As Macha is linked with the Morrigan, crows are also her animal. So working with crow energy and crow feathers and connecting with the crow is also a way of connecting with Macha. In a further either video or podcast, so stay tuned on both channels, I will do a talk about the totem animals of the Morrigan, as Cobweb starts meowing. So we will do a talk at a later date going more in depth about the totem animals of the Morrigan. But for Macha, we have the horse and the crow, mainly the horse and the crow. So we're going to work with those energies with Macha. And if you are lucky enough to go and spend some time with horses, I really, really would urge you to do that. When I was young, I spent most of my time with horses, going horse riding or looking after horses at a stable, a friend's horses, or the stable's horses. And that was basically a lot of my childhood. And the connection with horses, you can't describe it until you've really experienced it. It's so powerful, and at the same time so gentle. And if you are lucky enough that you can spend a day or a time or an hour with horses, I really would recommend it. But if not, you maybe you're on a walking and you may come across some horses. You can watch them from afar. You can read about them in different books, or of course watch documentaries on TV. And as well as reading the tales of Macha and researching her, connecting with the land and with the animals is such a strong way to really feel her energy and to invite her into your life. Perhaps you wish to do a meditation to connect with her, and that can be done with the drums or without, but it's really nice to do with drums, where you drum and you feel yourself as running with the herd, running with the horses, and you see her with you. So there's so many different ways of connecting with Macha. And if you have enjoyed this little talk about her, do a bit of research, feel her energy, connect with the land, connect with the horses, and connect with your own solar-filled empowerment. Because at her core, she's a goddess of abundance, of fertility, of the land, and of the healing power of the sun, and the fertility and wildness of the horse. So I hope you enjoyed this little talk. I'll be back next week with more mystical realms. In the meantime, have an absolutely fabulous Samhain or Beltane, and I'll talk to you all really soon. Take care. Bye.